Hey everyone, welcome to The Divided People. I'm your co-host Marky Mark, and today's episode is going to be about religion. We are also recording one tomorrow night with Jason Radcliffe and Victor Jones, who they are making a Friday the 13th movie locally, and I hope you give that a listen as well. This episode it's pretty good, I think. It follows Scientology kind of heavily. We try to get off the subject, but somehow we end up back on it a few times. Special thanks to May Little and James Jones for coming on and sharing what they've learned, and studied about religions. They've really put some insight on a few things, and we really did enjoy having them on the show. If you would like to be on the show, don't be afraid to contact us on any social media. We are just The Divided People. You can look us up anywhere. Also, while you're there, don't be afraid to give us likes, subscribes, and share our stuff. We would like to get our podcasts out there to as many people who are willing to listen and get more people on the show. That's really our main goal for this. We enjoy doing it. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoy this episode, and here we go. We're live. I'm your host, Marky Mark. Co-host right here, sort of, Lance Tillman.
Sort of. Oh,
sort of. You're not at the claim yet.
Oh.
We have guests today, May Little and James Jones. We're here to discuss religion. And May, what do you got for us?
Oh, I got for you. I came with a whole bunch of information about Scientology and why I hate it.
You want to give us a little bit of your background and all? Kind of let people know where you're coming from and all of this?
Sure. I studied religion in a private institution for about 2 years. I went to seminary school.
Really?
Yeah. And I didn't graduate. Let's all be very clear. I did not graduate. But I did take with me a whole bunch of information. Since then,
How close were you to graduating?
I was 3 semesters away.
That's not bad.
Can I ask a question? You don't have to answer
Yeah.
if you don't want to. Why didn't you graduate? Was it just choice or?
Oh, I got sick.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
I'll give you that one. Okay. All right. So what's what really drives you to study religion? Or what brings you to it?
I think I started studying religion originally because I had a massive crisis of faith. I grew up, my heritage is Mexican and Jewish. So
James perked when you said that.
Yeah, that's
we are
You're
not
seeing a German Shepherd when their ears go up? That was that
Orthodox
moment.
Jews.
Perked up like he got
Cutting glass over there.
They're pretty contradictory, but I didn't grow up with the Mexican side of my family. And the Jews are not practicing. We just had a whole bunch of matzah in our life. And then I think because my family had many different kinds of points of view, it led me to wanting to know, like, what was I going to be able to understand and go through in my personal life. And faith really drives me in that way. So I think that's what led me to study religion. But when I thought that it was going to create a space for me to more understand religion and faith, in reality it just created so many more questions.
Pandora's box.
Yeah. Definitely.
So are you a particular religion right now?
I don't subscribe to any particular religious organization.
That's a good way to put it too, because you do pay for religion anywhere you go.
Right. I would consider myself a very spiritual person. I'm kind of like, if it works, then that's what I do. And for me, like personally, if ritual and prayer didn't work, I don't think it would have survived.
So a lot of religion is based on every religion has its own basic moral structure. If you don't subscribe to a particular religion, do you prescribe to maybe favoring one's moral structure?
I mean, I think if you look at most of the monotheistic religions, you're going to find that their ethical and moral beliefs are pretty similar. I'm not going to say that they completely overlap, but most of them are pretty similar. And I think that those beliefs, like don't kill people, don't steal things, don't be an adulterer, like those kind of things, those all seem pretty standard across the board.
Besides the outliers, like such as Satanism, whatever.
Wait, isn't
Right,
Satanism
right.
pretty
Satanism.
peaceful?
Satanism, to my understanding, I saw multiple things talking about this. They don't view morality in the same way that an Abrahamic religion would. It's more akin to whatever you enjoy doing, such as if you enjoyed giving to charity, or if you enjoyed...
So indulgence, personal
Yeah,
indulgence.
and personal indulgence. Whatever made you feel good, do it. If anyone tries to stop you, yell at them.
I think the distinction there is also the difference between theistic Satanism versus
Yes.
LaVeyan Satanism. LaVeyan Satanists are very like indulge in what you will. They have like the satanic rites. One of them I personally think is really funny. It's Satan is the best friend of the church and always has been because it keeps them in business.
Yeah.
That makes me laugh all the time.
Anton LaVey was an interesting man.
Was a very
What about the
interesting
other
man.
one? You mentioned another one. What was the other Satanism?
Theistic Satanism. It's basically following the beliefs of Lucifer himself. I'm not super adept
well,
or knowledgeable in that.
James, we talked about this the other day. What was the religion close to Christianity that fell off?
It was a branch of Christianity. I think we were talking about Gnosticism, which Gnosticism has been used for a different purpose. Usually talking about there's a whole thing. I'm not going to explain it. It's very intricate. Anyway, Gnosticism developed alongside with Catholicism. In fact, it was actually quite different, though. Gnosticism actually, to my understanding, had two deities, one for the Old Testament, one for the New Testament, because if you read the Bible, the Old Testament God is very kind of...
Smiteful.
Yeah,
I go with dickish.
fire and brimstone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I say now,
definitely.
Very do what I say, or I'm gonna lay the smack down.
But when you read the New Testament, it's a very different, almost
Tale.
completely different character.
Yeah.
Until you get to Revelations. But yeah, they viewed there being two different gods.
Isn't that one of the big differences between Judaism and modern Christianity? Is that separation? Because the I know Judaism, some of the books that they read between Christianity and Judaism are...
Focus on
Well, I mean,
Abraham more.
the Torah is essentially the same as the New Testament. Essentially, there are some differences, but I would say the chief belief that separates the two is whether or not Jesus was the Messiah.
Yeah.
That's going to be your big differentiator.
There is a sect of Judaism that does believe in Jesus and all the stories. I think it's Masant. It starts with an M and then it's Jews. I don't remember the actual full name, but they believe that Jesus came. However, they do not believe that any of the Old Testament laws just fell off because he came. They believe essentially they are Jews. They just believe in Jesus. It's an interesting thing. I didn't really study them too far.
So, which one's more prosecuted? Current.
I think if you have Jew in your name and somebody is an anti-Semite, it doesn't really matter what the intricacies of your belief are. Somebody that is anti-Semitic is going to be anti-Semitic. I think that's just truth.
I'm still fascinated by I personally cannot tell the difference between a Caucasian and a Jew. So
I think it's the nose. If you have
Wow! there.
well, no, I know that a lot of Jews have curlier hair and a somewhat more prominent nose, but
and you can't be redheaded.
I don't think
yeah,
there would
oh
be...
yeah,
I don't think there's a ton of difference now, just because they've
they
spread out so much.
They were a big
Right.
thing in
There's
Europe.
people you would not think are Jewish that are Jewish
Yeah.
now. I mean, so
but we
now if
also
you're
have
talking
to
about
remember people in the Middle East, like the Israelite and Palestine conflict is still like amongst and going for thousands of years, and we're still arguing the differences between those two religions. But like I always bring that back to Sarah and Abraham, if anybody knows the story.
Yes.
If you don't know the story and you're listening, very simply, God promised Sarah that she was going to have children, and Sarah got impatient, and she sent Abraham to the bed of their slave girl Hagar, and Hagar had their son Ishmael. But God had always intended to follow through with his promise to Sarah, so Sarah ended up getting pregnant and having Isaac. And then Sarah got jealous, we'll say, and she was like, Hagar's gotta go. We're tired of her. And so they cast out Hagar and Ishmael, and Isaac stayed with Sarah and Abraham. One of the important things that I think is the key to remember is that Isaac and Ishmael, the sons, came back to bury Abraham together.
Yeah.
But it was Isaac who became the son of the Jews, and Ishmael the son that followed Islamic culture.
Yeah.
So, I don't mean to back up a little bit. I'm just curious. You were talking about Christianity in the past and all, and how it was related to, what was it called?
Judaism?
No. Before that,
off-brand Christianity.
yeah.
Gnosticism?
Yeah. I'm curious about. I've read this. I've seen it some places. Not an expert, of course. I'm not an expert. But what about paganism? I know it ties into Christianity in a way as well.
I actually find paganism, especially neo-paganism, to be very interesting. It's one of the things I actually personally study a lot. The only problem is it doesn't really have a religious text, so you gotta look at people's own interpretations of everything. Well, for some pagan religions. I do know that in Norse paganism, there is actually a lot of similarities between stories in the Bible, such as a deity called, what is his name? Balder. He is killed, and he is in the story of Ragnarok to be resurrected.
Not Thor Ragnarok.
Good movie.
And he's supposed to be this all good, all loving, perfect person, deity. And a lot of people draw huge similarities between Balder and Jesus. Also, with Odin, he sacrificed himself to get more wisdom, similar to crucifixion, Jesus sacrificing himself to what is essentially himself.
I think another big thing with paganism, if we look even just like locally in New Orleans, when Catholicism kind of permeated into like the voodoo culture in New Orleans, they started to make correlations between the saints and the deities of the voodoo thought. So like Gay Day became a different saint. I couldn't tell you which ones are which, but
I think James. Did we talk about the voodoo?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by voodoo. Again, no religious text, so I'd have to go down to New Orleans and talk to people.
Yeah, it's a very small. I know it from living here my whole life. You know, I know it's not a huge religion, but it seems to be more word of mouth. They do a lot of word of mouth with their religion. A lot of it's passed down just from family member to family member.
you'll find that with most of paganism.
Something interesting about voodoo in particular, it is a standalone religion, but it actually benefits a lot from being combined with other religions such as Catholicism. It's because they have their other deities which are viewed more on the level of saints, but there is this amorphous head deity which can be traded in for a god or a pantheon that fits your needs, but you're still also a voodooer, I think the term is, for someone who practices voodoo.
Yeah, it's funny that you're talking about like combinations of religion and stuff. I find that very interesting. Some things that I've heard of before, and I've seen if y'all have heard these. They might just be rumors. I've heard of like Easter, for example, the goddess Esther, and how it ties into Christianity, as well as Christmas and the burning of the tree and all that.
Right. I mean, if you look at let's just say like Celtic belief, you can correlate each of their holidays with a holiday in Christianity. So like Easter would be Beltane, and Yule would be Christmas, and
I forget.
etc.
I used to be big on this social media app that was nothing but pagans, but they would celebrate every 2-3 months because there was a new holiday going on. I used to have the wheel that showed all the holidays.
Big question: do any of these get me out of work?
I actually
Not if you work for
a
Call.
while back, I'll admit, I worked for this call center, and I really wanted a very specific day off, and I knew that day was a holiday, and that I had claimed that I didn't want to share my religious preference with my workplace. So I just went up to HR and I like showed them proof that this was a holiday, and I was like, I'm pagan, it's happening. This is a holiday. Like, we're doing it.
How family friendly is this podcast?
We're rated R.
Okay.
We're rated R.
Okay.
It's listed as explicit, so
The reason why I asked is because there was a video on YouTube that this guy was just talking hypothetically. He loves the idea that you don't really have to disclose your religion, and so you could get any day off theoretically. And it's like, oh yeah, it's jack off a horse day. You gotta let me out if it's my religion. Equanism.
Where does Wiccan fit in on this?
Wicca is a Wicca is a neo-pagan religion
so
that
they are connected to paganism.
Yes, to my knowledge, they are actually new, unlike modern resurrections.
Do they
of
actually
pagan-
refer to themselves as witches, or is that something somebody else?
A lot of different kinds of pagans will refer to themselves as witches because the combining factor that links them all together is like the movement of energy and the belief that they have the ability to control that energy, and that being what they call quote magic.
But anyway, something interesting about Wicca is, unlike other neo-pagan religions where they've been brought back to be practiced in modern times, when they had died out a couple hundred years ago, Wicca, to my understanding, was artificially created. I guess, okay, it's hard to talk about religion and artificiality because, anyway.
Right.
But Wicca is, I think, fairly new, like 1800s it was developed.
Right. Wicca definitely would be neo-pagan. It didn't come around when like the Christians were going through, and like even if you go back to the Great Awakening, we'll say, right? Like when you think of the Great Awakening and all the people who came over to America, there were so many different sects of Protestantism.
Sorry, back up. Explain the Great Awakening for people who don't know.
Yeah, I'm lost.
Okay, so the Great Awakening, I couldn't give you a time period because I was bad at dates, but it was basically the time when Christianity and Catholicism were in a battle. You know, like think of Luther, like nailing up the 99 Theses, right?
Is that the where the fish comes from? The drawing of the fish?
I'm not
Wait,
sure.
that's Christianity? The fish?
Yeah.
That's Christianity. That's a Christian
The
zone.
99 Theses were like the 99 things that Martin Luther disagreed with when it came to Catholicism. And he literally took his 99 Theses and nailed it to the door of a Catholic church. And thus was born Lutheranism. Okay? People who believed him followed him. And we started to get these different sects of Protestantism that were following through. And if you go back, like any of you could turn on any kind of historical, like king, queen kind of thing, you're going to hear about the Protestant and the Catholic debate. Okay? This debate led to an exodus of a whole group of Protestants that came over to America. And then they settled here, and you got people like the Mennonites and the Puritans and etc. that created different, and the Quakers that all created their different camps.
I know you said you were bad with dates, but do you know what era that was when they came to America, or
What?
era it was? I know you said
It's
you
a
were bad
time
with
period
dates.
if you had a rough idea.
Yeah.
I forget the
I was just
Yeah,
looking
with
up the
dates,
Wicca, and they were talking about how
I'm
it was
just
founded
I'm
in
curious
England
because
in
of
the
the
20th
fact that
century and all
I'm
that.
kind of curious how it affected America in a way.
Well,
So
the
what
Great
time
Awakening
period?
was the first bringing of colonies to America. So when the colonies came and they created all of their different areas, like you saw the Mennonites kind of create their area in Pennsylvania, and then the Puritans in Massachusetts.
the Amish and
Right.
Yeah, segregated them. Kind of
Right. They all
naturally
kind of went to
segregated
their
themselves.
own area, but these were
like
the
high
first
school.
colonies that came to America. It was like we came in. This was like when we brought the smallpox and we killed off a whole nation.
yeah.
That time period.
Okay. No, you're fine.
So we suck. Got it.
But I heard about that. Like apparently, like us killing Indians wasn't us really shooting them. It was more a disease killing them more
Well,
than
they kind of got us too. They gave us corn. You know what corn does for you? Makes you poop. You know what you get out of corn? Nothing.
I don't know,
true.
tortillas. Yeah, tortillas.
There's actually a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel that explains how we had a lot of advantages that were very much unfair.
Well, in the Amazons, they were explaining like the city of gold And then when they traveled to, there's like, yeah, the city, these amazing cities in the Amazon. And then by the time they came back, there was nothing there. But that was because supposedly that we carried smallpox over to them and we wiped out a whole civilization. And by the time we got back over there, the jungles just ate up the city, so it looked like nothing was there.
Yeah,
I mean, and that was a multitude of different things. Like, we as people carried those diseases, but also the rats and all of the livestock that we brought with us.
It was ironic, though, because what I've heard was that it was missionaries trying to spread religion that was actually killing them.
We would give them, I mean, the joke is that we would give them blankets and they would die of smallpox curled up in our blankets. Like, that was the joke. Dark joke, but...
So, moving on.
Move to the light.
No, we're going to go further dark because, you know, Scientology is a big joke. Yes,
Wow.
I said it.
Okay,
yeah.
Scientology.
Yeah.
I got some questions about this one because I know nothing about it. I haven't seen that show yet. I really want to watch that.
Wait, the aftermath?
What is it?
Or
What is it? Coming clean? That girl that left.
Going Clear.
Going clear. That's
Yeah.
it.
I heard,
I haven't seen
and
it.
I've also read the creator of Scientology was a science fiction novel.
Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard.
And
Of
he
Ron
said
Hubbard, yes.
the best way to make money is to make a religion.
Right.
And
We
then
also...
he makes a religion, and,
Mhm.
which is funny because Scientology
And
actually
Tom
owns the
Cruise
most
funds
land.
it all on his own.
But
Oh, he does not fund it all on his own, I guarantee you. One of the things that Scientology does, I mean, we'll start with like why I distaste Scientology in the first place, right?
Yeah,
We'll start with like Scientology brings in people that want to change the world, that like have the best of intentions, but they show them programs that they work on, like Narconon, which is like a drug rehabilitation.
yeah.
And they say, don't worry about that person. We're doing that. Give us all your time and your money and your energy and your life and your spirituality and your family. And we will do the world changing. Like, you don't need to do anything. We got it. And it kind of like takes away the core of a person because you are investing all of what you think is good works and good energy into this organization, but in turn this organization is not actually doing those good works that they're claiming to do.
Yeah. I there's a lot of bad religions that I kind of let off on a pass. Like, if I were to see a Jehovah's Witness, a individual Jehovah's Witness, I would not actually dislike him.
Right.
Well, unless, you know, he's a dislikable person. But the actual organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't care for the actual organization. Scientology, obviously, if you're just starting out, I'm not going to hate you. You don't know what you're getting into. But the higher you are, and the more that you know, I don't understand. I don't care for you just staying in, not trying to ruin them. Because there are a lot of things that you can ruin them. I know that they could ruin you and it'd be a very big what is it, martyr sacrifice. But
That sounds pretty cult-like.
it
It's-
certainly is a cult.
It is the definition of a cult. If you don't know the definition of a cult, I wrote it down before we started today.
Prepare.
I will say that
Go ahead,
I
girl.
like notes.
It's a system of religious veneration, of devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. In this case, being L. Ron Hubbard.
yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard wrote Dianetics, which is the basis of what Scientologists base their law off of. Like, if you think of Islam, right, we think of Sharia law, right, which is not technically law, but it's like their 10 Commandments. But that comes from the Quran, right? Dianetics would be their religious text.
I just want to say after you read the definition of cult, I pulled it up just so I could follow along with it. That is a really broad definition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
I'm like that covers a lot of things in the world.
I tend to actually split cult into two definitions. One of them being a more colloquial definition, which is a new religion. But there's also one that, if you compare it to the BITE model, I'm not sure the actual full name. It was developed by a man who wanted to take down cults, I believe. If you compare a religion to the BITE model, and you feel as if the score is too high, yeah, they're a cult.
Yeah, yeah.
I forget what the entire BITE model is, but it's a huge list that I can't get into because
Isn't technically all religions cults, though? I mean,
you could consider a lot of religions cults because
You really could. Yeah.
a lot of them fit into a couple of the BITE model parameters.
I always find like when I did studying on cults, I always told myself that there were like parameters, right? If you force someone to disconnect from people who do not believe the same thing that you believe, that's pretty culty. If there is something that says there is a policy of disfellowship or disconnection
Yeah.
or whatever, that is a
Apostates.
that's a big red flag. Another one I would say would be like the inability to communicate with people outside of your belief system, right?
Also leveraging your friends, families, loved ones.
Yes, just so we're on the same page, I pulled up the BITE model. It stands for Behavior, Information, Thought, and Emotional Control.
Yes.
Steve Hassan's BITE model.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard of that. That's actually pretty. I'll have to study up on
I
that.
learned about it from a YouTube channel called Telltale Atheist. He used to be a Jehovah's Witness.
The Jehovah
Yeah.
Witness are some there was a whole special, if you haven't seen it, on Aftermath, Leah Remini's Aftermath of Scientology, that is like an hour and a half, 2 hour long special on the similarities between Scientology and Jehovah Witness. One of those big ones is the practice of disconnection. And I think that in and of itself is a big indicator of a belief system that is splitting people apart rather than unifying them. Like, if you think about it, that is the total antithesis of what you would think religion would be.
So you mean like isolating them? When you say splitting them apart, you mean just separating them from other people?
They separate them from their family. Like in Scientology, let's say Mark was like, ooh, L. Ron Hubbard is my shit. And then he was like, he's talking to his wife and he's like, girl, L. Ron Hubbard, he got the answers. And she was like, okay. But then they have their 2 kids, right? When, let's say they join the Sea Org, which is an organization within Scientology that you join, which you sign a 1 billion-year contract. This is not a joke.
Wait.
Yeah, back up. She said be with Bill.
Well, not just that, but explain the organization part.
Yeah, we need to back up a little bit because, like I said, I am oblivious when it comes to Scientology. So
Okay,
the
so
basic structure of it.
Right. So the Sea Org, there are 2 different types of Scientologists. There's like a parishioner, who is somebody who like goes up the ladder. Let me find the
I
actual.
believe Tom Cruise is.
The Bridge to Total Freedom is what it's called. And it's broken down into 2 parallel paths, training and processing. And you can go up either side, and many do both sides. And there are also lots of optional courses that are kind of like forced on Scientologists. But your goal is to get up the entire bridge to total freedom to become clear, okay? Within Scientology, their organization, there's this thing called the Sea Org, which were originally supposed to be the people who devoted their entire lives to the cause. And they would go with L. Ron Hubbard, and he would go out on this ship. I don't even remember the name of it. It was something totally crazy. You should look it up.
No, that ship was a horror story.
Right. And they would be like the lackeys of L. Ron Hubbard. They would do all of the works. They would be up all night, and this still exists. Like, if you are in Scientology, you are being pushed to join the Sea Org. So let's say you wanted to join that organization. You were like, I'm for it. Scientology's got me. They would then separate you and your wife from your children, and the children would then go and be cared for somewhere else, and you guys would not have any say in how that happened. And so essentially, these children are raising themselves, and they are pushed into the beliefs of Scientology. You are being pushed into the beliefs of Scientology, and it creates this dynamic that's saying like Scientology is stronger than your blood.
How accurate is South Park? Son of a bitch.
Somebody
Like-
does their research.
like with the Mormons and this is like
So what do they believe that's so outrageous?
the top part because I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that got leaked.
It's like a overlord of some
Yeah.
sort, isn't it? What's his
It's
name?
Xenu.
Zanu?
Yeah.
Xenu? Yeah.
Something from like Star Trek.
Essentially, okay. So my understanding is, Dianetics which was mentioned earlier. Dianetics, to my understanding, is the act of sitting in a room with essentially a lie detector test.
Yeah, the e-meters.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you essentially tell this counselor person right now, whoever, okay, tell me everything you've ever done in your life, and you tell them. By the way, that's how they keep people in. You tell them everything. If you haven't told them something juicy, then you haven't told them everything. So you tell them everything about yourself, and then they're like, all right, so close your eyes and tell me more. And like after you told them everything, they're like, all right, okay, imagine you're somewhere, and you're like, okay, I see a barn. He said, open that barn door. It's 17th century France. And that's essentially they're saying, so yeah, you had a Thetan, a spirit, who was in 17th century France. And so they just make you keep on going down and down and down your line to where you think, oh, I've had this illustrious life as all these different things.
Sounds like D&D starts in your head. Don't you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, those Thetans, what they believe is kind of that in the beginning of time or some shit, there were these Thetans were like blown apart, and we are all made of little bits of these Thetans. And the residual Thetans are what cause us to do the things that are detrimental to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the purpose of those e-readings is basically that you're telling them everything you've done wrong, and they're conditioning you to be a different person. It's a very series of conditioning.
Sounds like confessing.
Right, but you're not allowed to leave the room. Like, if you're in confession and the priest is like, oh man, do 6 Hail Marys and go home, you're like, cool. And then you leave. If you're in Scientology, if you leave your e-meter reading, like, you are more than likely going to be considered a suppressive person.
Yeah.
What does that entail? Being a suppressive person? Pretty much out, they're done with you?
Yeah, a suppressive person is a person declared for a variety of reasons, which may include going to authorities about the church or negative press comments.
That's another tell-all if you are in a cult. If there is, for whatever reason, someone saying, don't go to the comps, talk to your priest or talk to someone higher up in the actual organization, that is a clear sign of a cult.
Yeah. Both of those acts are considered suppressive acts that can have devastating consequences for relationships in Scientology. Like, furthermore, if the church were to find out that, like, I remained in contact with, like, let's say Mark was like, Scientology is bullshit, I'm tired of this. And I was like, I'm a Scientologist, and Mark is my friend, and I'm just going to keep talking to him, because no matter what, like, he's my friend. If I continued to talk to him, I would then be labeled a suppressive person myself. And that's kind of how they keep everybody in. If you're labeled a suppressive person, you are cut off from everybody and everything. And let's say, like, you're in the Sea Org, which is known for having, like, atrocities against humanity. They have this thing called the Hole, which is like 2 double-wide trailers that they, like, stick people in and make them like Mike Rinder, one of the heads of Scientology that is now out, will tell you that there were tons of these people in these double-wide trailers, and they would, like, be beating the truth out of each other. And if you didn't do that, you just continued to be in that situation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty extreme. I didn't know all this.
For the record, Scientology will tell you that none of this is true.
No,
Like,
yeah.
Scientology's lawyers
Yeah.
will tell
heard,
me
like,
that
the
I am a
accent.
suppressive person.
I heard if you ask the question, like, so what is Scientology? Oh, it's the best thing that ever happened. While they say that while they're walking out the door. Like, that's the end of the interview, period.
Actually, the actress who left Scientology had that special. They have clips of her when she was a Scientologist back in the 90s, early 2000s. And she is talking about it like, oh, it's a wonderful organization. She's talking exactly like you would want someone who's trying to hype you up.
Right.
Talking.
Leah Remini is her
Leah
name.
Remini.
And she talks very candidly in her special about her experiences after leaving Scientology, but also when she was within. And she's also very candid about the things that she contributed to within the, like, toxicity of Scientology.
So if they're so tight-lipped about it, how do they sell it?
How
do they recruit new members?
They're like most of their
Not putting
churches.
this out there so you people join. I'm just saying.
Actually, I remember I went to Arkansas for a family reunion.
I thought you said, I remember when I joined.
No, they had their own channel. just on DirecTV somewhere, just talking about.
Really?
Yeah.
They have a whole building and organization that handles marketing.
Yeah.
Well, they own most
It's
of
a business.
California, land-wise.
Well, that's how they keep their tax exempt status. That's another one of the things that religious organizations, it kind of like kills me about them. Like, we're talking about Scientology, which is based off of a fictional science fiction novel, okay? This religion that practices disconnection, and like, if you are a suppressive person, and let's say like we're all on this podcast talking shit about them right now,
We're suppressive
right?
people.
We are
Yeah.
suppressive people. If they hear this, they can start and will start an entire smear campaign against every single one
Well,
of
hey,
us.
I mean,
That can only
You will
help
have a
I was
website.
saying-
Yeah. There's no such thing as bad
for the one
publicity.
viewer who's listening,
for all two of you guys. Spread the word. So, all right. So they have a sales team that I mean, probably not as good as Jehovah's Witnesses though. I mean, come on, that's their
Oh,
whole thing is.
Actually, you're talking about like tax exemption. Relatively recently, like within the last month or so, the Satanic Temple became tax exempt, which I find to be very interesting. I don't dislike their actions, only due to the fact that they keep religious extremism in the Western world down, because
I thought atheists did that.
the Satanic Temple is a group.
I don't
of
know. I've
atheists.
met quite a few atheists that are pretty extreme. Let's all be
Yeah.
really honest.
But no, like
It's
I
true.
want to know the Satanism like market, like knock on the door, come join hell, like we love you.
oh, they just got a Twitter.
See, my thing with atheists is what I find is sometimes, like you were saying, sometimes they're a little too aggressive. I feel like if you're going to be a real atheist, you should just kind of be like, like let it go.
Yeah.
As long as you're not affecting me directly, but a lot
very
of them
libertarian
are
of you.
like, really, no, you must be atheist too.
Wait, isn't that the contradiction? Like atheists kind of form their own religion in a way, even though they're
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm
It's
saying.
pretty interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of like New Age atheism.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, it was just like, I just don't really care.
Yeah.
And now it's like, no, you must not believe with us. I don't know,
There are
very
some
confusing.
very outspoken atheists nowadays. I do believe most of them. Like you're probably working with an atheist right now. You just don't know. That's because like the thing is,
What's the other term? There's atheists, and then there's
Agnostic.
Agnostics.
that's it.
agnostic is again. I think I already mentioned this. I wasn't sure if it's the test or not. But agnostic and Gnostic, those are actually combined. Like those are similar but opposite
Similar,
words.
yeah, definitely.
Armored Skeptic had an entire video describing what the difference between Gnostic and agnostic is. If you're a person religious and you don't want to challenge your faith, you probably shouldn't look up Armored Skeptic. But I'm pretty sure you can probably find an infographic describing the difference between atheist, theist, agnostic, and Gnostic. Atheist and theist means they don't believe. Okay, atheist means you don't believe. Agnostic means you don't know.
So you're confused. You're
That's
just,
that's a really good
Yeah.
like condensed version of agnosticism. I've always thought of it as like you believe in something, but you're not really sure what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're like, there's something out there, but I don't know what that is. I'm not following no scripture. I don't go to church. I'm just saying there's got to be something.
yeah, I think most people in America actually fall into that, even if they don't realize
Yeah.
it. Because if you're truly atheist, I mean that your moral structure would kind of fall apart. Now,
well,
I mean,
there's humanists, which is a atheist religion. Well,
See, like,
okay.
that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, I'm now. This is just coming to me as we go because
Yeah,
I'm
I
learning a lot
understand.
here. So I'm thinking about it. I'm like, most moral structure in this world has come from some form of religion. It's developed over time. So to be a true atheist, I mean, you wouldn't fear consequence or anything else.
Well, that's where the humanism comes into play. Humanism, I guess you can see it in a selfish light. I see a lot of things in a selfish light, so it's not really that hard to describe it. But if you view it in a selfish light, you are probably not going to go down. Okay, people aren't going to like you if you say talk shit to a homeless guy. So you're just not going to talk shit. Like, they think
It's
a
just
couple
regular
steps
social norms is what
yeah,
you're
you
saying?
think forward in
Yes,
time
but
for your
that's
consequences.
what I'm getting at. The
Right.
social norms that
Yeah.
we have.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them in America, and this is just what I've picked up over time, a lot of them are heavily based on the religions that are mostly
Yeah.
rooted in our country.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reason for that originally, before everybody knew how to like read and write, and there was the Department of Education, religion was the only thing that was taught to every single
Yeah.
person. So it made sense that things like that were included. Like when people talk about being kosher and being Jew, I have to kind of like laugh a little bit because historically it is that like swine are not native to that area. So
Yeah.
by the time that in that day pork made it there, it was naturally gonna be all like gross and like that. So they weren't gonna eat it. So the only way to get that through to other people was gonna be to put it through the religious text. That's
Yeah.
my own like thought process. I'm not quoting anybody. I'm just like this just seems natural thought to me.
I have heard a theory
The enemy
that
of
is
religion.
essentially. I have heard a theory that's essentially your theory that essentially people saw that people were dying after they ate rank pork, so they're like,
I have.
that's probably
read-
God telling us not to eat rank pork.
I have read that people in ignorance taking things to exaggerated points.
Yeah.
Now, it's possible a lot of religion is based on that, and I'm not saying that's true or false, but I'm just saying a lot of things were unknown at that time. One thing I used to joke around with people about was about when they talk about faith and Jesus, and this was, I was young, okay, I was
Yeah.
stupid. But I used to
You're
ask
still
people.
stupid, but yes.
Thanks. So I used to just ask people, and they were like, well, in Christianity, you just gotta have faith. I'm like, so it's all about faith? And they're like, yeah, you just gotta have faith. I'm like, what if a guy walked up today and told you he was Jesus Christ? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what if he walked up to you today and told you Jesus Christ and told you what to do? Would you do it? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, what happened to faith? I'm like, well, there's got to be some.
Right, like the question essentially is like they all believe Christ is coming again. So if you're not going to believe somebody when they tell you they're Jesus, like how are you supposed to keep going, baby? Like I don't understand.
Yeah, I feel like that's been always been the confusion for me. And like you were talking a while ago about humanism,
Yeah.
and it reminds me of a lot of actually like Buddhism. Buddhism
Yes.
doesn't have a God that I understand, right? It's all about
I know
self-enlightenment.
that most sects don't. I believe that there are some outliers that have a deity.
I do, yeah. The Buddhism has a lot of different factions.
Yeah,
I've
it's
only read a tiny bit
huge.
about that, but
But most of them do not have a deity. No, most of them do not view Buddha as a deity.
the teacher.
He would be
Yeah.
more like a prophet. Like
Yeah.
if you were to like categorize him in terms that people would understand,
Yeah.
he would probably more fall on like the prophet
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, just throwing this out there. Favorite religion.
My favorite.
Not saying you subscribe to it. Just saying your favorite.
my favorite.
Most interesting to you, kind of.
Most interesting to me. Okay, the most interesting to me by far has to be Islamicism. There's like a crazy amount of like contradictions that I find within like the two different sects of Islamicism, and if you put an Islamist from America next to an Islamist from Iran, they're going to believe and follow two very different forms of
Yeah.
Islam. And something about that is so fascinating to me because you don't really find the same thing with Christianity. Although I will tell you that like one of the most poignant things I've ever heard was that the KKK is just as equivalent in Christianity as like an Islamic extremist is to Islamicism. It's an interesting
That's interesting.
correlation.
What's
Yeah, I
the
guess.
most BS story from Christianity?
Oh man.
Ooh, I got an answer for that. I might get some hate because it's a big story. David and Goliath. Because they mentioned, like, most Bibles mention him being like 8-9 feet tall. The Dead Sea Scrolls have that story in them, and he's 6. He's 6 feet tall.
True.
Like, he's still tall.
Depending on where
He's-
you are in the world, that could be
That
pretty
is still tall, but that is nowhere near 9 feet tall.
But it didn't say how big David was.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
David could have
No.
been a midget.
Yeah.
I'm
But did I
sorry,
say-
a little person.
Wait, was I
What
talking
is
about-
the proper term for that now?
Dwarfism.
No, wait, no, that's a different term. I
But
heard.
if
I'm
you
speaking
call
Game
them
of
a
Thrones.
dwarf,
Ah,
I'm
okay.
speaking Game of Thrones.
So
sorry.
if you're Tyrion height, then that's pretty big.
Well, if you're Tyrion height, it's kind of hard to use a sling.
Eh.
you know,
Actually, a lot of people believe that he used a shepherd's sling instead of the independent sling that you use in one hand. Shepherd's sling being more akin to a trebuchet.
Which
Ah.
is
A
Trebuchet?
trebuchet is the
Catapult.
thing where you kind of get the stick. Oh, okay, this is inhuman engineering.
Kind of like
I guess.
lacrosse.
Yes, exactly
There
like
you go.
lacrosse.
I just want you to get a visionary for people.
yeah. I guess trebuchet.
I doubt many people know what lacrosse is, honestly.
You can look up lacrosse. We gave you enough information.
Yeah, you can also look up shepherd's sling. It's
Yeah, that's just as easy.
shepherd's slings are known for hitting harder, but they're not necessarily as accurate. Like I'm talking about hitting hard. Like you can get a rock the size of your fist and launch that sucker. I'm not even
He
kidding.
knows from personal experience.
So, what's your favorite religion?
My favorite religion is
Just interest of it, and
neo-paganism, specifically Norse, Asatru, Odinism, stuff like that. Essentially, Odinism.
they're
is a
good
bit-
stories. I
I
can be with
know.
you on that. Like, those are the stories that I like to read, like mythology and all of that. There's nobody who studies religion that's like, I don't like to read mythology. That's some bullshit.
My favorite religion to shit on, and like, if you're Wiccan, I'm not talking about every Wiccan, but the ones that feel like there
He
is
shit
this.
on y'all.
you can't believe everything. It's just the way it is.
No, like the ones that feel very strongly that crystals have some significance in the universe, similar to like essential oils. I like shitting on them. It's like really.
This shiny see-through rock has powers.
I have a very good friend. Two quick anecdotes. I have a very good friend who calls those types of people patchouli wearing, oh my god, fucking hippies. And in terms of
that
the
explicit title.
crystals, while I could argue maybe a little bit that there's some significance in,
Yeah,
in
there's-
different types of gems,
They
I
have
would-
a uniqueness that is
Yes.
universal.
I would say like the funniest story I have about one of those patchouli wearing motherfucking hippies is I used to build cob houses out on these like communes and stuff. And there was this girl who was batshit crazy, just totally off her rocker. And she was very neo-pagan, and she believed very strongly in these rocks. And she told me once, this is an explicit story, just for the record, explicit story coming. So she comes down from the camp once, and she looked super distraught. And I'm in my tent, just chilling, reading. And she's like, I gotta talk to you. I did something terrible, and I don't know what to do. And I was like, girl, what happened?
Did she
Are
drop
you
a rock?
okay? She put the rock inside of her, you guys. She put the
Front or
rock
back?
inside
She became one with the
the
energy.
front. She was like, I thought my like womanly energy would cleanse it, and then I
Was it on
lost
a
it.
full moon?
No, the super.
She lost that shit.
No, okay. When the blood moon happened, no, okay. So I'm on a pagan group on Facebook. Of course you are. And everyone was talking about, oh, the super blood wolf moon. The wolf was never mentioned anywhere.
We are just going to go ahead and offend everyone this
But
episode.
they're like, what?
This is also the last episode.
What crystals are good to charge in the super blood wolf moon?
They just keep expanding the title. The super
I think-
ultra blood wolf moon.
I think you brought up a really good point in terms of like generally in religion that we there are a lot of people who do not fully educate themselves in what it is they're claiming to believe.
Okay, so that leads me to a question.
Sure.
How do you feel about religion being a school?
I think if you know you're going to a Catholic school run by nuns, then you should expect Catholicism there.
Correct. I mean public schools.
In public schools, I believe very strongly in the separation of church and
Me too.
state.
I will say this. I personally had a moment of silence in high school, and that's not to the non-religious, it is also fairly
But,
good.
Yeah, but do they direct you to
Like,
what
they-
you have to do during?
They
the
don't
service?
they don't state a prayer. They used to, I think, when I was a freshman, but they don't state any direct prayer. They just say a moment of silence after the Pledge of Allegiance, which is nice.
Yeah, typically that's more of a sign of
I would
respect.
agree with
Yeah.
religion in school, but it's kind of impossible because my opinion that if you're going to do that, you have to do it with every single religion.
Yeah.
It's just too
And give-
many.
yeah,
It's
that's
too
the
hard.
thing. And give
Yeah.
them the option to choose, but
That's
you
a-
can't do that.
I really so religion in school. I hate the idea that first of all that there's a debate between creationism and evolution. There's no debate.
Well, I gotta tell you, there is a book out there. I gotta look it up and find it, but there is a book that I heard about. No, I'm not really that religious myself,
Yeah.
but I heard there's a book out there. I gotta find it. Guy tries to actually line up evolution with Christianity.
I saw that, but it's not accurate anymore because of the evidence they found of the asteroid.
No, this was new. This was fairly new.
Yeah, they just found out some stuff like recently within this year.
Yeah, everything changes constantly.
Yeah,
So-
Like they're finding out like layers and layers upon layers of us being rebuilt as humans in a way.
Right. I mean, I think the important thing that we should remember is that there are 299,000 different recognized religions. Like, this does not include indigenous tribes in, let's say, Africa or South America that are just like practicing whatever it is. Like, we could, every single one of us at this table, be wrong, and there'd be this guy with a cockroach that he's worshiping in Africa that's like, I did it, I figured it out, and he could be right. You know?
Yeah.
299,000 different recognized religions.
Yeah.
None of us really have any idea what the real truth is, because the reality is every single text that is written for religious purposes is written by a man. Like, there's no slicing and dicing.
That was the other issue I had with religions in general, like it being passed down from
Yeah.
translations, from books. I mean, it gets to a certain point where, how sure are you that someone just didn't go, I'm gonna add this little bit in here, right here. This
But
sounds a
there's
little.
That's why
bit
you pick it
totally
on
my
Mormons.
argument
Why are
against
you picking on them
Jehovah's
Mormons?
Witness.
Oh, Mormons are pretty shit, and I'll shit show on them any day.
Dang.
Mormons. Oh.
I watched that season of South Park, bitches.
Get my magical top hat. I need to read some scripture.
Mormons and
Dum,
Jehovah's
dum,
Witness
dum,
are
dum,
very
dum.
similar in the way that they believe that it is their job to, oh my God, what is the word? To evangelically bring the word of God to the people. But like you were just saying, that the problem with this is, in terms of Jehovah's Witness, they follow the New World Translation of the Bible,
Yeah.
and the Mormons are following what's his toes, the prophet, and who's
John
his fuck,
Smith.
that doesn't like matter in
Does
any
it?
way.
Doesn't Islam have something similar to that, though? Saying that they have to spread the religion?
Well, every religion will tell you that
Yeah.
you should spread the religion. These are just people who take it to a whole new motherfucking
Actually,
level.
I forget. I believe. I don't know. Okay. Oh, no. Zoroastrianism actually doesn't spread the religion. Zoroastrianism being the religion of.
10 people.
No. Actually, yeah, it's going to be like that in a couple of years. Because you can't marry into. If you are not a Zoroastrianist, you're not supposed to marry a Zoroastrianist.
So it's
That sounds
incest.
like, yeah, that sounds like a
so
recipe
it keeps
for
on getting
incest.
down, and like soon there won't be anymore. But context for Zoroastrianism, not really context. Who was the lead singer for Queen?
Freddie Mercury?
Yeah, Freddie Mercury. He
Get
or at
off
least
my
his-
show.
No, I was about to say Bon Jovi. I didn't want. Okay, but anyway, at least his parents were. I'm not sure if he was himself a Zoroastrianist, but his parents were Zoroastrianists. So it's out there. It's out and about. But honestly, you don't really hear that much about Zoroastrianism.
I'm just gonna like, as a person, be like, what the fuck is that, bruh? What do they believe?
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought it was a video game. I didn't know what
It's a Middle Eastern religion, but it's not Abrahamic in origin.
Okay.
I believe it is Indian or Pakistani in origin.
Y'all have used that term a couple times. What does that mean exactly?
It goes back to the story of Sarah and Abraham.
That's what you meant? Oh.
Wait, I'm going to
Yeah.
raise my hand. What are you talking about exactly? Because I'm wondering if you're asking about origin. What does that mean?
Abrahamism. No, I got a computer.
A religion based upon Abraham
Abrahamic.
would be like Isaac was the son who brought Judaism into the world, and Ishmael brought.
God, so like the
Yeah.
original separation.
Yeah.
here.
So the three main dudes: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. I'm sure that there are also other smaller ones, but those are practically the biggest religions in the world at this point.
Right.
So it's easier to just
So
say.
I actually have that pulled up now that you say that. So just for some context, Christianity currently, according to the internet, which how much can we believe that? Christianity says we're at 2.4 billion, which is number one. Islam comes in number two at 1.8. Hinduism comes in at 1.1, and
Oh, yeah.
Buddhism comes in at 0.52. This is in billions. I thought Islam was ahead of Christianity.
Me too. Also, yeah, me
I
too.
mean, currently, I thought there's like 30-something nations that are mostly Islamic.
I mean,
Maybe we bombed them all. I don't know.
I mean, but how small two nations?
It's true.
Yeah.
America's, America's pretty big.
Yeah.
I wonder how they measure that. How do you think they get those numbers?
Census. I don't know the. I don't know the
Never gotten a
censi.
religious- I never got a religious.
I don't know the plural.
We're
of-
like the grammatic.
I think somebody's artificially inflating those numbers. So, we talked about your favorite religion. What about your most hated?
Well, that was Scientology. We went over that too.
For both of you?
Well, not for me.
I don't know, you had a strong, like, you were ready to spit on them.
Well, no, I dislike Scientology.
Bullshit.
I dislike Scientology, but I really dislike again, not the individuals, but the actual entire organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. If the Watchtower Association, also being the term that could be used for the entire organization.
I see some disdain in both of you.
Girl, yes.
I
Girl, yes.
hate that entire
There's so many similarities between the two, and that I literally sat being like, am I going to talk about Scientology, or am I going to talk about the Jehovah's Witness?
Why not both?
Ambos. Listen, I'm with you on the Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
There is a... Okay. There is a Kingdom Hall, is that what they're called?
It's Babel, I believe.
Yeah. So they go to their religious...
It's a cult. What's the term? Okay, it is a base of operations, known as Babel, where you go there. Like, if you're lucky enough, you can go there. You can't get married, you can't have kids, but you go there and use your unskilled laborer skills. Build stuff and all that, and then they kick you to the curb when you're too old. So you have no
Right.
work experience, you have no money because you've been working for a religion the entire time, and I thought you guys were
No,
talking.
go ahead.
Okay, and it just screws people over, and people are like, "Oh, it's the best thing to be sent to Babel."
That is the equivalent to the Sea Org in Scientology. Like, when you
Yeah.
leave the Sea Org, you are left with nothing because they are housing you. They are putting
Yeah.
you to work. They don't pay you the same kind of wage that you're going to make out in the world.
Yeah.
Also, with Jehovah's Witness, one of the big things that correlates them is, I mean, Jehovah would call them a disfellowship.
Yeah, disfellowship. Also, by the way, one more thing that I don't like about Jehovah's Witnesses: the basis of their name is incorrect. Jehovah is a mistranslation or a mispronunciation of Yahweh.
That I've heard of.
The Jews did not write the what's it called, the vowels to Yahweh in the Torah. So some German dudes were like, oh, let's just add these vowels right here and let's pronounce it as a German, and they said Jehovah.
Fucking Germans.
And it's factually incorrect. It's Yahweh.
We're gonna get like no views. We should.
Yeah, everybody's gone. all two of you left the room.
When we talk about disfellowship or disconnection in Scientology, the basis behind this practice is the severance of all ties between either a Scientologist or a Jehovah's Witness and a friend, colleague, or family member that is deemed to be like antagonistic against the church, or a suppressive person in Scientology, or also somebody in Jehovah's Witness that is not following the laws. In religions such as the Nation of Islam and Jehovah's Witness and Mormonism, there's like an elder council that you go to, and let's say you've broken one of the like quote laws of whatever religion we're respectively talking about, you would go up to this council and you would have like a due process where you would explain like, no, I didn't really say that, like Sarah was lying, I didn't say that, that's not true, and kind of be able to defend yourself. But this isn't it's kind of like a sham. Like, they're telling you have the due process, but you don't really.
Yeah.
They have all of the power and the control there. And if you are disfellowshipped or disconnected from the church, or even excommunicated in Catholicism, like, they're not supposed to talk to you. So people are losing their entire families. Like, if your entire family is involved heavily in a religion, and you finally come to your senses, let's say, and you're like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? And you step back, you have the potential of losing your wife, your children, everybody that you've ever loved is going to tell you, I'm sorry, you're not a part of my life anymore. Yeah.
Did that apply more to, like, historically, or is that
Oh, this is more of a theory. When everyone was Catholic, if you got excommunicated, no one was going to talk to you. The best thing for you to do is go in the woods and die.
Wow.
I mean, how can you prove you were
Like,
excommunicated, though? Like, what if you just go to another city?
There's,
You
like,
will
signs out that
find
send out a daily
that the
mail.
Catholics
like,
have
you-
very good record keeping.
Yeah.
You'll
Also,
find if the
Well, I'm
Catholics
talking
do
about-
anything well, it's
the
record
Vatican
keeping.
archives.
But even back then, like,
Pretty
even back then,
extensive.
it's not like, you can, like, I don't know, you sprint to another city. You got a couple weeks before they're like, hey,
That's fair.
what's your name again?
It's-
Or if
yeah.
you just lie. Or if you're like,
I
yeah,
think
John,
that's-
you're not allowed. My name's not John. My name's Jim.
Actually, if you were in a huge city, I would, like, obviously, likely you would have been poor anyway because it was in the Middle Ages. But if you were in a huge city, like, what was a big city in the Middle Ages? Yorkshire. Let's say
Sure,
Yorkshire.
yeah.
Is it Yorkshire or York?
Ooh.
That's
Either
That's
way.
a fair point. You got the computer.
Okay, actually, you know what? I was being dumb.
I had one job.
Rome. Literally just Rome.
Literally just Rome.
Anyway,
There we go.
you just move to the other side, and no one's going to be in the same parish as you. So no one will know that you're excommunicated. But I imagine if, like, word will get around, and one day you
Unless
get
you're just
screwed
that
up.
asshole that
I don't know if there were IDs back then. So. All right, so just a couple little questions. Can you name something good religion has done for the world?
Oh, funded scientific research such as Copernicus, Galileo, stuff like that. Like,
Right? He was,
You thought
I
about
was over
that
here,
one. How
Like, there-
thinking,
there
pondering.
are some bad things that religion has done, but to be perfectly honest, that's our entire history, and we didn't really get a double-blind study. But, like, the stuff that they have done that's good, they funded so much research into how the world works. Yeah, it might have been biased, but it saved us millennia of extra research that wouldn't have been funded.
It's fair.
And they published it on their own dime.
Well, you mentioned bad things. What's
Like-
probably the worst thing you can say religion has done?
Inquisition, I don't think anyone else will deny that.
Mm.
All right, and what about you?
It's probably going to sound really hokey and hippie of me, but I think the best thing that religion has done overall is give people faith and hope.
So would you say it's needed?
I gotta key the cheesy music.
Right. Is it needed? Man, that's a really good question. I think
Because a lot of religion kind of creates a community.
Yeah.
And it
yeah.
seems that when places have communities, it thrives.
Right. I mean, if you look, the reality of the situation is if you go to Clearwater, Florida, you are going to find an entire town worth of Scientologists with very clean parks and a very nice policeman. And, you are going to find a community of people that are happy in a sense, we'll say.
Yeah.
Okay? On the face of it, you're like, wow, this is really pretty and awesome. I think... Is it necessary? I think religion, organized religion as a whole, gives people the ability to believe in something. It gives them an answer. And I think some people are going to believe that they're finding the right thing. Like, they're moved by what they read or what they do. And because of the like vast morals that you're gonna find in Scientology, and not in Scientology and religion. Wow, I got super distracted there. the vast majority of ethics within religion you'll find overlap. You know, we're not supposed to kill people, we're not supposed to steal, we're not supposed to like marry our neighbor's wife, you know, like all that shit's not cool. But
Depends on the wife.
Your wife don't listen to this.
pause for dirty joke. But I think that organized religion is giving people the ability to pick something, really anything. But I don't think that organization is really necessary,
So
in my own opinion.
Could you replace it then?
I don't think so.
Actually, I want to just chime in on that because this
Yeah.
is just an observation.
Right.
This isn't really like somebody's smart opinion. It's just me. So,
He's a fucking Cox cable man.
exactly. I'm a cable guy. I'm doing a podcast in the kitchen. So anyway, my just observation of it is people tend to be drawn to something.
Right.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a void of that, then they'll fill it.
Yeah.
And it could be with something good or bad.
I think that comes down to the question of faith. And many people who study religion, I think, whether you do it recreationally or as an academic, a lot of people are looking for, like, what is true? What is the reality of what we're living? And because of that search, a lot of, like I told you that my belief came from studying. I was like, I don't really know. There were two really juxtaposing beliefs in my upbringing, and I wasn't sure where to go. And so for me, I went to the books. I was like, I'm gonna read. I'm gonna figure this out, and that can lead people to this crisis of faith. And when you're lying in a crisis of faith, it can really bring you to I don't know, like a depressive place where you're like, I don't know the answers, and you feel like you got the whole weight of the world on your shoulders, and you just don't have it, you know?
In my opinion, I'm not going to say the word necessary, because I've seen a lot of people who aren't religious who are very happy with their lives, but it's not as necessary as people think it is today, in my opinion. I believe it should be more personal for the individual, not necessarily this huge big brother that obviously not every religion is going to become a big brother thing, but I don't believe it needs to be the driving force for government or for any local governments. I feel that you should find the answers in yourself, and whatever makes you comfortable with your own mortality, your place that you're at in your life, or whatever problems you have. If you find the answers, good for you.
So, I got another question. Came with some questions. Don't know if you would know this. I'm hoping college kind of went this way. During slavery, there's stuff I read online that they used Christianity as a brainwashing tool for slaves. And how true is that, and how true is it that there are very lost religions from Africa that they believed in that we now brainwash them to believe in Christianity?
Okay. I would say that it is undoubtable in my mind that the religions that would have come over with the peoples of Africa are in some ways lost to us. That not all of those could have survived that atrocity of humanity. As to Christianity being used as like a brainwashing tool, I think that can sound really terrible when we say it out loud, but I think there is a reality to it. That they would gather them up and tell them the scripture, but spin scripture in a way that convinced them that they were where they needed to be.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the brainwashing of it.
I got something to talk about. The Roman Empire, it's kind of like that. It wasn't necessarily a brainwashing tool, but in the same way that telling someone who at that time would have been subordinate to you that you believe the same thing, it will cut back on the violence if any violence ensues. That's what the Roman Empire did, actually. It was so expansive that whenever they conquered some place that wasn't already integrated, they'd be like, "Oh, you believe in Ishtar? Well, that's actually Aphrodite. Well, no, that'd be Venus." And like they would just keep on integrating all these religions. That's why Roman mythology is so cobbled and weird and expansive,
Right.
because it wasn't meant to be together. But they did that to cut back on infighting, because there's going to be civil wars everywhere if
Right.
war with
Each
this-
new place that they you're right.
Yeah.
Historically, each new place that they conquered had a different belief system, and they would, much like Catholicism did with Voodoo, integrate their own belief systems within that and create new stories. Be like, oh no, no, that's Persephone. What are you talking about?
Oh, the thing that ruined that entire thing was Christianity, actually. Because they were like, oh, Yahweh? Oh, yeah, that's totally like Zeus. And I was like, fuck no. That's Yahweh. Don't you
What you
ever
talking
say,
about, Willis?
Don't you ever say that shit to me again. That's Yahweh.
Wow.
Zeus. Romans.
So what you're saying is they like to keep everybody under the
Yeah.
same umbrella.
Which
to
is kind of
prevent
funny that
infighting.
they try to do that, but then they changed a lot. if you
Yeah,
think
we-
about
well-
it. like even wow, why am I drawing it? Well, Christianity, the Pope. Dang,
Yeah.
I don't know why I blinked on that.
The pop.
Like
The Pope is Catholic.
Catholic, sorry.
That's
But-
from Christianity, though.
Yeah.
For
I mean,
some
I would-
reason, I've seen people who claim that's not.
Catholics and
Christians.
Christians would
Catholicism.
argue that till the day they die,
Yeah,
but I
but-
would say
you know.
a Muslim or a Jew would consider a Catholic and a Christian the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Well, I just think it's weird that like we have these quote unquote texts from God, but yet the Pope can just go and say what he wants, like, you know, oh well, that's not a sin anymore.
Well, it's-
Interpretation
Like,
of the book.
I just feel like that's weird. Like,
By the way, the Pope right now, to my understanding, just made masturbation not a sin.
What?
Yeah.
see, but how is that?
Catholics, buckle up! You got some stuff happening, y'all.
That's what I'm saying though. Like, how is that?
Hundreds of years of pent up
What-
frustration.
the priests can finally enjoy themselves. But it just makes no sense to me that all of a sudden, like, that just goes on to the whole, you know,
Well,
man's
who
just
are we to
taking
say that
charge.
God wasn't talking to the Pope? Like, that's not.
I think
mean,
I think
don't
that's
know.
actually what they believe, isn't it? That God speaks through the Pope.
Yeah, but if that's the same sense, then like, who's there to say
Like,
that?
why all of a sudden is God okay with masturbation, though? Like, if he was for thousands and thousands of
It's,
years
it's like
not okay with you touching yourself, how come we can diddle ourselves now?
Maybe because they'll stop touching little boys.
it's like the musical.
Ooh.
It's like the musical.
And the audience
Book
is
of Mormon.
back.
Anyway, it's like the musical Book of Mormon. I'm not sure about the exact date, but like in 1965, God changed his mind about black people.
What? I haven't seen that yet.
It was made by the same people who make South Park.
What?
Yeah.
It was the Book of Mormon is a really funny musical. If you are not a fan of Mormonism and you
Oh yeah.
and you want to have like just a good 2 hours, Google that shit. It is some really funny
Yeah.
music, like
Hasidic
2 by 2, we're
eagle.
marching door to door. Like, it is the greatest stuff.
Hasidic eagle white.
Wow.
You know, that's
We're
funny
gonna
that you
make them
brought
a lot
up
of money.
race because Scientology themselves, they talk about having like way back in the gap, if you look at all of the pictures, you'll see that they're a predominantly white religion. And then as we reached the end of the 90s and into the 2000s, they had this partnership with the Nation of Islam. And if you don't know what the Nation of Islam is, it's an African American religious and political movement formed in the aftermath of racial inequality and injustice. And it would believe that African Americans would never gain equality in the U.S., and their leaders emphasized the need to separate from white Americans, right? So think about, just for a second, what I just told you, that Scientology did not really have any black people in it. And then that this African American organization is then a partner with Scientology. How does any of that make sense, you
Isn't
guys?
that the one led by Louis Farrakhan?
It is the one led by Louis Farrakhan, yeah.
Isn't he a little bit controversial in the world today?
He totally is. Farrakhan has been their leader since 78, and he rose to fame with his blunt language about the struggles of African Americans and the messages of what he called, quote, self-empowerment. He speaks in history, but also, like, he's espousing anti-gay and anti-white and anti-Semitic views. And, like,
Why does that matter to Scientology? They're
Because if you're not
aliens.
if you're not Christian
Right.
or Jew, I mean, there's a
Well,
better
what they're
chance of you a
doing is
Scientologist.
like the thing about Dianetics is the catch. What it was supposed to be that caught people was it was the substitution for therapy. Like if you ask a Scientologist if they believe in therapy, it's a no. Therapists are
Psychologists
suppressive
are immediately suppressive persons.
right. It doesn't matter if you studied psychology, you are a suppressive person.
Yeah.
So
Because it goes against Dianetics.
right.
But don't they technically study?
Right.
Hypocrites.
Scientology believes that all other religions are worthless, right? And since its inception, Scientology has been traditionally white. But at some point, David Miscavige, who we haven't mentioned yet, which is funny, but he is the leader of Scientology now. He took over for L. Ron Hubbard after he died. He's supposed to come back. If you guys don't know that Scientology believes in resurrection, here is your cue.
I feel like we can do a whole episode on
We
just
could. I'll come back
Scientology.
and do a whole episode. There's so much information
Actually,
about it.
Okay, and like this is a very niche explanation. If you are very into Dungeons and Dragons,
Elves don't come.
elves are resurrected.
Jones elves or Skyrim type elves?
Skyrim.
Okay.
D&D
Okay.
elves.
Because you know what Alex Jones types elves are,
Yeah.
huh?
No.
No. Apparently, it's when you take
Oh God, I just learned about
this
that.
certain chemical. I don't want to say it because I'm gonna sound like stupid. 'Cause I'm gonna say it wrong. And then, because the government does, the top leader of the government, they'll take this thing and they'll stop their hearts.
Dude, you're gonna have Alex
and they'll
Jones
go
beating
into
down the
another
door.
reality. And these elves, extraterrestrials, actually aliens technically, they show you new technology. And that's how we got-
InfoWars, this is not a direct quote.
Don't say that, man, because we're going to get blocked on YouTube and Facebook.
Oh yeah, you're right. Anyway,
Can't even connect to them.
We hate you. Fuck you, InfoWars. Now we're good.
No, we're good.
Anyway,
Hate against them,
anyway,
it's
back to
okay,
the-
I
Okay.
understand.
Anyway, back to the niche explanation. Okay, so essentially, think of a jar of jelly beans. Each jelly bean is a soul. When a baby is born, they're given a jelly bean. That's the soul. And like when they die, that jelly bean goes back in the jar.
Yep.
That's essentially what Scientology believes
So,
in this as well.
like, all energy is not created, it's just
yeah,
passed on.
yeah. That's
Well,
what.
it was all already
That-
created.
Well,
That's-
yeah, I mean, that falls into science. Energy can't be destroyed; it just changes forms, correct?
right.
Yeah.
Why is it called Scientology, though? That's the part.
Yeah, I never understood that.
You know what? I
Science
honestly
fiction.
don't have the answer for that, but that makes
Science fiction.
sense.
Sounded like an interesting. They're like,
why not sci-fi? Like,
well, that sounds
well,
like
because
you can't believe it.
actually, because during its inception, I believe that it was not viewed as a religion; it was viewed as a science because they viewed Dianetics as a science.
Dianetics was supposed to be the alternative to therapy.
Well, some people would actually cite the science of religion.
Right.
I mean, the religion of science is what I should say.
Right.
I've heard of people that said things like that they see it as science as a religion.
Anyway, so David Miscavige thought he could get into the black communities through partnership with the Nation of Islam. And if you look now, the Nation of Islam Church has a long history, just like Scientology did, of like the racial segregation, right? And the only white people who are allowed into a Nation of Islam Church are now people who are preaching Dianetics.
Oh, really?
Really, it's a crazy partnership. Crazy
Yeah,
partnership.
look at this motto. I'm reading. So I'm sitting there on this page, and I mean their motto there is justice or else! Exclamation point.
Right? Yeah.
or
Okay,
kinky
so
kinda
let's
guy.
say, well, we all now we're all now suppressive people. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I was suppressive since day one.
Okay with
Yes,
that.
we
I've
are
watched
so
South Park.
suppressive. It's so good. So Scientology hears our podcast and they're like, "Ugh, fuck those people,"
I'll say thank you for listening.
and they're gonna be like, "Okay, so May Little's got
I mean,
some
you
shit to
listen.
say," and they're gonna go through all of my stuff. They're gonna hire a private investigator. They're gonna picket my house. They're gonna it is search and destroy, like some crazy shit, you guys. They
I would
take
feel
people's
so
lives down.
special if they did that to me, though. 'Cause I'm gonna be like, I kind of be crying, like, you noticed me.
I'd be outside. I'd be out there with a camera.
So the Nation of Islam and Scientology start to have this relationship, right? And they kind of suck you in, and then they have you moving up the bridge, which originally, like, the bottom part of the bridge is all just basic stuff, like, you know, give up your past, like, stop dwelling on it. You need to move forward, and these kinds of things that are supposed to help you. That's how they catch people. They're like, no, we're helping people. What are you talking about? Like, these people are getting good lessons. But from the field auditors become staff, page 2, this was May 9th of 1965. L. Ron Hubbard said, the only way to control people is to lie to them. Again, the only way to control people is to lie to them.
But I mean, I don't understand the whole. Oh wait, he said what about? That's why he started? I'm still gonna believe it's okay. He didn't mean it.
But an important thing to remember is that you don't find out about Lord Xanu until you are
deep in it. Shit.
Yeah, you are
Yeah.
so deep
Well,
in.
see, that's the thing. He was an author. He might have been a shitty author, but he did know the rule. Don't lead with the crazy shit. You start off with small stuff, and then by the time you get to the crazy shit, you're already hooked in.
Yeah.
You don't want to say
slow indoctrination.
don't want to prove that you're wasting my time.
Right. I mean, there's a couple things that Scientology does. First is they see like a calamity hit, right? Like a hurricane or a tsunami, and they go out to places like Haiti or Ghana, and they use that opportunity to exploit and teach people about Scientology. So they're like spreading this word. And then the other thing that's important to remember is that, like, you're probably thinking, like, Scientology obviously is infiltrating the Nation of Islam to show that they're not racist, right? They're like, no, we've got the Nation of Islam with us. We're obviously not racist, right? So we're like, that's what Scientology has in it.
Is that like the equivalent of, hey, this is my black friend?
Right, yeah, exactly.
No, I've got one, I promise.
Get through the door with this, right?
He'll be here any minute, I promise.
Like, the distinction is, like, one has the upper hand and one has the lower hand. There's a division of income and inequality there. Like, the Nation of Islam has technically more followers than Scientology, if I remember correctly. You can fact check me on that. But nothing is free in Scientology, and they ask Scientology members to sponsor Nation of Islam members in their quest to climb the bridge, right? And so Minister Tony Muhammad, who was a huge name in the Nation of Islam, he will tell you that, like, he became a better Muslim because of Scientology, and that L. Ron Hubbard should be ranked among the saints. Okay, like, they have infiltrated the Nation of Islam.
Kind of like Hitler being on People's Magazine?
Kind of. But the thing that like the Nation of Islam is getting is that they are receiving a portion of money based upon who they bring in to Scientology. So from the field auditors become staff, page 2, you'll find the org promptly pays the field staff member 10% of the amount received for the processing services and 15% of the amount received from training. This is, say, like, Mark, we'll just keep saying that Mark is a Scientologist because I like picking on him. So Mark is a Scientologist, and he's like, May, what's up? I like Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard's the shit. Let's do it. And I'm like, I trust you, Mark. Let's go in. I'll take the e-meter test. It's whatever. So he brings me in. I take my free e-meter test, and I'm like, whoa, they've got me. I'm about it. And then you have to, like, prepay money, which is a crazy other part of Scientology. But you have to, like, prepay this money that you have to turns into, like, credits or something. Yeah. And then those credits buy you your courses in Scientology.
You think with all that money, they would have hired a band by now and made some songs?
Well, how they stay tax exempt is their ideal orgs.
No, I'm just saying, like, you know, all religions have their songs. Like, you know, you hear Hallelujah or, like, Holy Gospel. And you're just like, and then Scientology, like, do they have a song?
Just to throw this out there, so currently the estimates for the Nation of Islam are somewhere between 20,000 and 50,000. Now, Scientology, that's just the Nation of Islam, not Islam, period. Nation of Islam, the organization. The Scientologists are estimated, only estimates, they don't have any exact numbers. Their estimates are at 25,000 to 55,000, but they apparently claim on their website that they're adding almost 4.4 million people a year, which is obviously blowing out the numbers.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. One of the worst parts about Scientology, I think, is their tax exempt status. Like, all of these people pay to move up the bridge to total freedom, right?
One of those.
And we're all and the price increases as you go up the bridge, and you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to go clear and be the best you can be.
By the way, if you are clear in Scientology,
technically, by the canon of the books, you should not be able to get sick. Which, I mean, I don't understand how anyone continues on when after they get like a single sniffle and it's like, I already paid $2,000 and this goddamn sniffle.
Yeah. So they pay to not have the sniffles, and then what the organization is doing is they're taking all of that money and they're putting it into what they call their ideal orgs, which is basically them just buying up property everywhere in like Harlem and Englewood and all of these places where there are like 10 people in a building, but they build these extravagant buildings because to keep their tax exempt status, you can't have too much money. Right? You have to be like filtering it back into the world. That's how you stay tax exempt.
So you buy all the land and then...
Right. So you buy land and it turns into assets. And your assets are not taxed when you're a tax exempt person. So they're just consistently just buying up property.
Buying the world.
Right.
By the way, one more thing about them not being sick. I think I just figured out how it works.
Tell us.
He's so
Being
good.
dead isn't necessarily being sick.
If you're dead, you can't be sick.
Yeah.
It's not
fair.
listed as
No
a
more
disease.
sniffles. In fact, you can't be out of breath.
So like, you know, at the end you go into this room and it's actually like a gas chamber.
Yeah. Somebody's like, click, click. What was that? None? Wow. I'm looking at this list of notable Scientologist celebrities. I mean,
yes.
Kirstie Alley, Catherine Bell. I mean, everybody knows about, what's his name? Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
John Travolta. I didn't know that.
He's a big Scientologist. If you watch that Going Clear, they talk a lot.
Yeah, I
about
gotta.
him.
By the way,
watch that.
Scientology also has like a subordinate and like what's the term for when you are above someone?
Mentor?
Authority. Authority and subordinates. They have this entire structure
Hierarchy system.
to where, like, hypothetically, and I'm sure that most people that they'll turn around by that point if they're too low in it. But hypothetically, Tom Cruise could go to any Scientologist house with a dead body in the trunk and be like, "You gotta help me burn this car."
Wow.
I bet their orgies must be insane.
you gotta help me fuck this horse.
Wow.
I'm just saying, like at that
Better than
point,
Catholicism? I mean, come on. Them guys know how to party. Alright, so what are your thoughts on what drives people to religion? Like why do people even bother?
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
They
That's
don't-
definitely my answer, yeah.
Don't know what's gonna happen when you die. Don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Don't know if you're gonna eat tomorrow.
Most
But-
people are more anxious than they are like willing to say that they are.
well, it's kind of different now though. Like modern age versus back then, because like now it's kind of you can kind of stand on your own 2 feet. Because like back before when like you were poor, the church paid for a lot or helped you survive.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not so much as that, at least in the United States.
I mean, to be fair to Catholicism and Christianity, Catholicism mostly, I'll say the St. Vincent de Paul organization is a great organization that puts consignment stores, and those consignment stores will give people, like, if a hippie gets stranded somewhere, they'll give them a bus pass back home and things like that. They will reach out and work in the
It sounds like you're
community.
just shipping the homeless somewhere else.
Yeah.
We'll help you get home,
We're
buddy.
gonna
We don't
help
want
you
you
by
to
sending you over there.
Oh,
Go
you're
listen to the
welcome.
Protestants, please. All right, this is private property.
It's funny that we were talking a while ago about people who aren't really religious anymore in the historical term of it. There's a show, I don't know if you ever heard of it, called American Gods. Have you ever heard of this show?
I've been wanting to watch
Yeah.
it because apparently Mr. Wednesday is actually a very good interpretation of Odin.
Yeah.
I've heard that. Somebody suggested it to me with the exact same
Because
quote.
because Thor, like the Marvel movies, Odin, that is not Odin.
No, not at all.
Odin is, in the books, Odin is curious. He is curious. Like, a lot of people like compare him to Zeus because he's the head god. No. He's nothing like Zeus.
Zeus was like a father figure, and
Careful what
Odin
you step,
wasn't
'cause he
like
has
that.
issues with that in the comics.
But no, like,
You with Odin in the comics versus the movie.
but no, Odin, Odin, again, like, he one story in particular. By the way, we'll get back to American Gods in a little bit.
You're good. Go ahead.
Religion, keep going.
Odin actually, he bet his life on a riddle match to see if he was smarter than someone.
Wow.
And like he won the riddle match because no one knows what he said to Balder before they set his boat out to sea to burn it because he had already died by that point. So he whispered something in Balder's ear and then cast out the boat and then they lit it on fire. Which, by the way, is the only time that's actually a thing. Burning of boats wasn't an actual Viking funeral. It was burying the boats with the captains inside.
Wow.
Dead captains. They're already dead.
How sure are you?
It's amazing how
Well, they're dead now.
I would say 75%. I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like they were dead.
Like you
first.
hear the knocking and you're like, no, fuck, we're halfway there. Just he's dead.
The bell is going, and you're like, we'll leave him.
no,
I got somewhere to be. Like,
But yeah, Odin is much more Athena, Hermes-esque than Zeus. He's just a very curious person, very unique amongst most mythologies, as I know. Anyway, back to American Gods. Also, Mr. Wednesday, Odin's character. Wednesday actually comes from the anglicized name for Odin, which was Woden, and it was a day commemorated to Woden, and it eventually just worked its way down from Woden's Day, Wednesday.
Wow.
Thursday.
Knowledge is power.
10 points to your Hogwarts house for finding a use for the word anglicized in like, modern day language.
But what I thought was interesting in the show is what we were talking about, how some people got away from historical religion and they've kind of gone toward other things. They fill it with other things. And that's actually what that show is about, which I thought was interesting, because it's supposed like the new gods were like like TV, internet. Those are the gods now, and it made me think.
How interesting is that thought?
Yeah, because I was like, that kind of is how things now. Now people worship things like television, video games, movies. I mean, you wouldn't believe how mad people get when I say I didn't like Endgame, but you'd be amazed. I mean,
check the first podcast for that one.
that's right.
Dropping views wherever you can.
So, has any of y'all seen that show?
I have not seen it. Wait, are you talking about
It's
Endgame?
a book too. No,
Oh,
no,
no,
American Gods.
okay.
I'm turning that into a show, but
Start
no,
talking
it's a book too. And I heard it was pretty good.
I wonder if AI is going to have like religion in the future.
I mean, that's all in that show. That's the thing. It's all these new things that people worship, and they gain power based on how many people believe in them. So that's kind of what the show's about. But it's pretty interesting. So
This is me writing down that show.
Like,
right
I feel like the
now.
AI is going to be like, we pray to the cassette players of ancient times.
well,
I mean, there are laws to robotics. I feel like if there's laws,
They
people
have
can
feelings
create
too, right,
systems.
guys?
yeah, that's a whole nother topic. I mean,
It's a
religion,
question.
robotics, and AI, all that. So, final thoughts. Your big wrap up on religion. What do you got?
Why don't you go first?
I am not formally educated, so I just want to learn more. It seems like a lot of religions have their place, and they've had influence, most certainly had influence on a lot of things. Had their, was it their fingers in many pies? Or is that, okay, yeah. They've,
Pots, whatever.
yeah.
Pockets.
Oh, wait.
Depends on what you're trying to go with.
Well, I guess a lot of religions have had their fingers in pockets.
Yes.
Yes.
And pants.
Oh, okay.
Let's not go back to the Catholicism.
I said
Come on! The Catholicism.
I think my big wrap up would be that there are pros and cons to every single thing in the universe. Religion being one of them. Like the cons really for me are extremism. Like really think about what you believe in, and if you compare that to, let's say, the complete opposite thought process. Let's just say you put LaVeyan Satanism right up against Christianity, and you're asking these questions. I guarantee you that somewhere in the middle you are going to find some sort of similarity. And I think a big problem that we have is that there's such a division that, like, we're no longer looking for the similarities between all of us. We're looking for the differences and pointing them all out to each other instead of just allowing you to believe what you want to believe.
Bringing that up, actually, if you read the Quran, by the way, the Quran's very interesting. It's actually very similar to the Bible. If you read, it's very similar language, obviously. The Quran, I don't believe has been translated as much, but
Probably not.
Yeah.
Every time I try to look up stuff about that, they always talk about this interpretation.
Well, because
I don't know if there's any
that's because
exact translation.
Well, that's because every copy, every translation that's not in Arabic is seen as, I guess you could say,
blasphemy.
No. It is not how it should be read.
It's kind of like the watered down version,
Yeah,
right?
essentially.
It's like
Anything
if
that's
you
not the original
translate
Arabic.
the Torah from Hebrew,
Yeah.
you're not going to get the same translation.
And I feel like that's significant enough to where it's kind of hard to justify listening to someone's opinion who's only. Well,
It's kind of like language differences. I mean, like in
Yeah.
Japanese, they have words that we don't have.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, for things you feel that we would have to.
Spirits, demons,
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah, we
like
would have to
that.
put whole sentences together to
There's
explain it. They
layers
have a
to
word for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Day after tomorrow. I
Yeah.
think Sweden has.
Well, we have that. That's tomorrow.
Well,
It's just lost.
that's the end. This has been the Divided People. Pray on it.
Well, how'd you like that? I want to thank y'all for listening to the Divided People podcast. And if you would like to come on and talk about anything and everything, we're more than welcome to have you on. Just contact us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Doesn't matter. We respond to everything. And subscribe to us while you're over there, too. And like the video. And don't be afraid to tell your friends about us. We appreciate everyone who listens. We are the Divided People. See you later.